All right, ready to dive in. Today, we're taking a deep look at the IPCC's AR6 synthesis report.
Yeah, this report, it's a beast.
Definitely not light reading.
But, that's where we come in, right? We'll break it down for you, make sense of the science and all that.
Exactly, like your friendly neighborhood climate report translators, minus the awkward jargon.
We'll give you the need to know, highlight what's fascinating, and maybe, just maybe, leave you with some hope.
Speaking of need to know, this report doesn't mince words, does it? It straight up says human activities are causing the planet to warm.
Yeah, no sugarcoating here.
They even put a number on it, 1.1 degrees Celsius hotter than before the Industrial Revolution.
See, 1.1 degrees, it doesn't sound like a lot, but think about it. If your body temp jumped up that much, you wouldn't be feeling too hot, literally.
Right, you'd be sick.
And the planet, well, it's feeling it too, More extreme weather, seasons all messed up, sea levels rising, all that fun stuff.
Okay, so what's driving this warming? The report points the finger at greenhouse gases, particularly carbon dioxide, or as everyone calls it, CO2.
Think of it like a blanket, a giant invisible blanket wrapped around the Earth.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
That's kind of what CO2 does. It traps heat from the sun, and that heat, well, it has nowhere to go but stay here, so the planet warms up.
Like a greenhouse, right? Hence the name.
Exactly, greenhouse gases. And guess what? We're pumping more and more of it into the atmosphere every single year.
All right, so more CO2 equals more warming. That makes sense. But then the report says global greenhouse gas emissions actually peaked in the 2010s. So more bad news, right?
Well, not so fast. It's not that straightforward.
Oh.
See, while the 2010s did see the highest emissions ever recorded, the rate at which they were going up, that actually slowed down a bit compared to the previous decade.
So it's like we're still hitting the gas pedal, but maybe a little less aggressively.
That's a good way to put it.
So a glimmer of hope then, but we've still got a long way to go.
Exactly. We're starting to bend the curve, but we need to slam on the brakes, basically.
So the report isn't all doom and gloom. There's some positive signs in there.
Yeah, like it shows that some of the things we're doing, like switching to renewable energy, are starting to make a dent. But we need to pick up the pace, big time.
Because the report also makes it clear that climate change isn't some distant threat. It's impacting us right now. And it's not just about melting ice caps and stranded polar bears, right?
Yeah, totally. Climate change is hitting home, literally, affecting people all over the world. From scorching heat waves in cities to farmers struggling with unpredictable rain.
And it seems like the people who are being hit the hardest are the ones who contributed the least to the problem.
Sadly, yeah, the report highlights that unfair burden, Vulnerable communities in developing countries, small island states, they're on the front lines facing the worst of it.
It's like the people who caused the problem aren't the ones feeling the effects first.
Exactly, and that raises some serious questions about responsibility and how we can help those communities that are already dealing with the consequences.
Okay, so that's the present. What about the future? What's the report's outlook?
Well, they've gotten better at predicting the future thanks to improved climate models. They've narrowed down the uncertainty, so to speak.
So they're more confident about what's likely to happen.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And under nearly all the scenarios they looked at, global warming is going to keep going up in the near term.
Not great.
Nope. And they even have this term, reasons for concern. It basically flags all the risks that come with a hotter planet.
Okay, reasons for concern, lay it on me. What are we talking about here?
Well, one big one is the impact on unique ecosystems,
Yeah.
Coral reefs, rainforests, glaciers. Those places are vital for biodiversity, for people's livelihoods.
So not just a warmer planet, but a less diverse one, more fragile.
That's it. And another worry is extreme weather events, hurricanes, droughts, floods, the whole shebang.
And those are getting worse, right?
You bet. And with every little bit of warning, the risks just keep stacking up. It's not a gradual thing, more like a slippery slope. Things can get out of control fast.
Okay, not exactly a rosy picture. So what can we do? The report talks a lot about mitigation and adaptation.
Yep. Two sides of the same coin, sort of.
Two sides of the climate action coin.
Okay. Mitigation is all about cutting down those greenhouse gases. Moving away from fossil fuels, embracing clean energy, changing how we produce and consume things.
So mitigation is about stopping the problem at the source, right? Stopping the planet from getting even hotter.
You got it. But the report also says, look, we've already warmed the planet up some, so we need adaptation too.
Adaptation, that's about dealing with the impacts that are already here, right?
Yep, it's about building resilience. Think seawalls to protect coastal communities, developing drought-resistant crops, designing cities that can handle the heat.
So mitigation is preventing more damage, and adaptation is dealing with what's already happening.
Imagine it like this. Mitigation is turning off the stove so the pot doesn't boil over. Adaptation is finding a way to catch the water that's already spilling.
Love that analogy. We need both approaches to tackle this thing.
Couldn't agree more.
But where do we even start? I mean, the report sounds pretty overwhelming, to be honest.
I get it. It can feel like that. But there's good news too. The report really stresses the importance of near-term action, specifically what we do between now and 2030.
Okay, the next few years are crucial.
Exactly. This decade, it's make or break time. We have a chance to make the biggest difference.
So what do we need to do in the next few years? What are some of the concrete actions?
Well, the report says there's a lot of potential to cut emissions through things like renewable energy, using energy more efficiently, and tackling methane emissions.
So it's stuff we already have the tools for, right? Not some far-off future tech.
Precisely. A lot of the solutions are already here, ready to go, and they're cost-effective too. We just need to ramp things up and fast.
So we're talking solar panels, wind turbines, that kind of thing.
Yeah, all that good stuff. Plus, making our buildings more energy efficient, that's a big one.
So we're not talking about waiting for some miracle invention. We have what we need.
That's the thing we do. It's about action, not just talk. And it's about doing it now.
But can't it just be governments and big companies taking action? What about regular people? Can we actually make a difference?
Absolutely. The report is really clear about that. Individual choices and actions matter, big time. It's about realizing you have power. You know, that your choices make a difference.
So it's not about feeling helpless, it's about taking ownership of the situation.
That's it. And the report calls those individual choices demand-side measures. And believe it or not, they can really shake things up.
Okay, demand-side measures, I like that. We're going to have to unpack that more, and I got to admit, I'm really curious to dig into that more.
Yeah, it's a fascinating concept, how our individual choices can actually shift the system, you know?
It's like, can we really shop our way out of climate change? I mean, it sounds a little too good to be true.
It's not quite that simple, but there's definitely power in our wallets and our everyday choices.
Okay, so walk me through it. How do these demand-side measures actually work?
Well, imagine this. Millions of people start buying electric cars. Suddenly, the demand for gas guzzlers plummets.
Okay, makes sense. Supply and demand, the market responds.
Exactly, and that sends a huge signal to car manufacturers, investors, everyone, really. It's like, hey, the future is electric, better get on board.
So it's not just about making a personal choice, it's about sending a message to the whole system.
Exactly, you're voting with your dollar, showing what kind of future you want.
Okay, that makes sense for big purchases like cars, but what about smaller everyday stuff? Does that really make a difference?
It totally does. Think about food, right? If more people choose plant-based options, even just a couple of times a week.
Okay, meatless Mondays, got it.
Yeah, things like that. It could create a ripple effect. Supermarkets start stocking more plant-based products, restaurants expand their veggie menus.
And farmers maybe start growing more diverse crops.
Right. It all comes back to that idea of demand shaping supply.
So our choices, even the seemingly small ones, can add up and create a big shift.
They absolutely can. And it's not just about what we buy, it's also about what we do, our actions.
Okay, so what are some of the actions people can take to, I guess, flex their demand-side muscles?
Well, for starters, reducing our energy use at home, switching to LED light bulbs, using energy-efficient appliances, all that good stuff.
The classic energy-saving tips.
Yeah, but they make a difference. And think about transportation too. Walking, biking, taking public transport whenever possible.
So ditching the car, at least sometimes.
Exactly. And it's healthier for you too.
Yeah.
Plus, it reduces traffic congestion, makes cities more livable.
Multiple wins there. And what about being more mindful of what we buy in general? Choosing products that are made sustainably, ethically.
That's a big one. Supporting companies that are doing things the right way, that are reducing their environmental footprint.
So doing a little research, making sure our money is going towards companies that align with our values.
Exactly, voting with your wallet again. But this time, it's about supporting businesses that are part of the solution, not the problem.
Okay, I'm seeing how these demand-side measures can really create a ripple effect across the economy.
They totally can. It's about shifting the market, changing the incentives, making sustainability the norm, not the exception.
But honestly, isn't it all a bit idealistic? I mean, sure, individual actions are great, but don't we also need big systemic changes like government policies and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. We can't just shop our way out of climate change, that's for sure. We need both individual action and systemic change that go hand in hand.
So it's not an either situation.
Nope, it's both all hands on deck. Individual actions can create momentum for policy changes. They show policymakers that people care, that there's a demand for action.
So it's like building a movement from the ground up.
Exactly. When enough people start making different choices, it sends a powerful message.
And it can make it easier for politicians to enact bolder policies knowing they have public support.
You got it. It's all connected, this beautiful web of individual action and systemic change working together to create a more sustainable world.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these pieces fit together, but even with all this talk of individual action and policy changes, sometimes it's hard not to feel a little, well, powerless in the face of such a massive global challenge.
I hear it's easy to get overwhelmed. But think about it this way. Every big change, every movement, it all started with individuals taking action.
Right, like the civil rights movement, the women's suffrage movement.
Exactly. Those were all sparked by people saying, enough is enough, we need change. And they started small, organizing in their communities, raising their voices, demanding to be heard.
So individual action can be a catalyst for bigger systemic change.
Absolutely. It's the seed that grows into a forest, you know. One person makes a choice, then another and another, and pretty soon you have a whole movement demanding action.
Okay, that's a powerful image. So what are some of the most impactful individual actions people can take, the ones that really make a difference?
Well, the report highlights a few key areas. First, reducing our carbon footprint. You know, how much CO2 we're responsible for emitting.
Yeah, so that's about things like transportation, energy use, what we eat.
Yep, all of that. Choosing low carbon options whenever possible, making conscious choices that minimize our impact.
And what about like getting involved in our communities, advocating for change? Does that count as individual action?
Totally. It's about using your voice, speaking up for what you believe in. It could be joining a local environmental group, contacting your elected officials, or even just talking to your friends and family about climate change.
So it's about spreading awareness, getting more people engaged in the conversation.
Exactly. And it can be as simple as sharing information on social media, supporting sustainable businesses, or even just having those conversations over dinner with your family.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these seemingly small actions can add up and create a bigger wave of change.
That's the beauty of it. It's a collective effort. We all have a role to play, and every little bit counts.
But let's be real, not everyone has the same opportunities to take action. Some people face more barriers than others, whether it's financial constraints, lack of access to resources, or just living in a system that makes sustainable choices more difficult.
That's a really important point. And the report acknowledges that individual action is more likely to flourish when it's supported by enabling environments.
So it's about creating a context where sustainable choices are the easier choices.
Exactly. And that's where things like government policies, urban planning, and corporate responsibility come in.
So, for example, if your city invests in bike lanes and reliable public transportation, it makes it much easier to choose those options over driving.
Yep. And if companies are transparent about their environmental impact and offer sustainable products, it makes it easier for consumers to make responsible choices.
So it's like a two-way street. Individuals need to be willing to change their behavior, but we also need the systems and structures around us to support those changes.
That's the key takeaway. It's not about putting all the responsibility on individuals, nor is it about waiting for governments or corporations to solve the problem for us. It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play and that those roles are interconnected.
And that's where this idea of collective action comes in, right?
Exactly. The report really emphasizes the power of people coming together to demand change. When individuals join forces, they can amplify their impact and create a movement that can't be ignored.
So think about the youth climate strikes, the marches for climate action. Those are all examples of collective action in motion.
Exactly. And those movements have played a huge role in raising awareness, shifting public opinion, and putting pressure on policymakers to take action.
So it's not just about making individual choices, it's about being part of something bigger, something that can create real systemic change.
That's the power of collective action. It's about recognizing that we're not alone in this fight, that there's strength in numbers, and that together we can create the future we want.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired, but also a little overwhelmed. There's so much to do, and it's easy to feel like it's all too much.
I hear you. it can be daunting. But the report also highlights the importance of focusing on solutions, not just problems.
So instead of getting bogged down in despair, we need to channel our energy into action.
Exactly. And it's about finding what resonates with you, what you're passionate about. Maybe it's reducing your own carbon footprint. Maybe it's advocating for policy changes. Maybe it's supporting sustainable businesses.
The point is, there are many ways to contribute, and every action, no matter how small, is a step in the right direction.
That's right. And don't underestimate the power of hope and optimism. The challenges are real, but so are the solutions. We have the knowledge, the technology, and the ingenuity to create a more sustainable and just future.
We just need the collective will to make it happen.
Exactly. And that starts with each of us, making choices, taking action, and joining forces to create a movement that can't be ignored.
Okay, so we're back, and we're diving into this idea of like individual action, right? How much can we, as just regular people, how much impact can we really have?
It's a big question, right? I mean, this whole climate thing, it's global, it's massive.
Exactly. Like, I swap out my light bulbs for LEDs. Does that really change anything?
Well, on its own, maybe not a ton. But think about it this way. If everyone, or even a lot of people, started making those little changes, those LEDs add up.
Okay, I see what you mean.
It becomes this collective shift, right? And that's where the power lies, I think.
So it's not about feeling like I have to single-handedly solve climate change.
No way. No one person can do that. It's more about being part of a larger movement, a collective push for change.
Okay, I like that, being part of something bigger. But how do we even start that? What does that kind of individual action look like?
Well, the report talks about this, and it's honestly, it's a lot of things.
Like what?
Well, for one, being mindful of our consumption.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you said, swapping those light bulbs, maybe driving a little less, maybe eating a little less meat.
Okay, so those everyday choices, they can contribute.
Absolutely. And then there's using our voices, speaking up, getting involved.
Like becoming an activist.
It could be, yeah. But it could also be simpler things. Talking to your family and friends about climate change, staying informed, voting for candidates who prioritize climate action.
So it's about raising awareness, keeping the conversation going.
Exactly, because those conversations, they lead to change, to action.
Okay, so from the little stuff like what I buy at the grocery store to bigger things like who I vote for, it all adds up.
It all contributes to the shift in like mindset and priorities. And that can lead to some real tangible change.
But let's be real, sometimes it's hard to know where to start, or even if your actions are making a difference.
Oh yeah, totally. It can be overwhelming, for sure.
So any advice for those of us who want to get involved but feel a little lost?
I think the first step is just staying informed, educating yourself about the issue. There are tons of great resources out there, websites, podcasts, books.
Like this podcast, shameless plug.
Exactly. And then find what resonates with you, what you're passionate about, and start there.
So if I'm really into food, maybe I focus on eating more sustainably.
Exactly. Or if you're all about transportation, maybe you advocate for better public transit in your city.
Okay. Find your niche, make it personal.
Yeah, because when you're passionate about something, it's easier to stay engaged, to make those changes, to keep pushing for more.
Okay, so we've got like being mindful consumers, using our voices, getting involved in our communities. What else does this whole individual action thing involve?
Well, the report also talks about the importance of supporting others. You know, like creating a culture of sustainability.
What do you mean?
Well, like encouraging your friends and family to make changes, supporting businesses that are doing things the right way, being patient with people who are just starting to learn about this stuff.
So it's about building a community, a support system.
Exactly, because change is hard, and it's easier when we do it together.
And when we see that other people are making changes, it can be really motivating.
For sure, it normalizes it, makes it feel more achievable, less overwhelming.
Okay, I'm feeling a little more hopeful now, knowing that even small actions can make a difference.
Me too. And the thing is, when all of those individual actions come together, they create this incredible momentum, this force for change that can really shake things up.
It's like that saying, right? Be the change you want to see in the world.
That's it. It might sound cheesy, but it's true. Every action, every choice, it ripples outwards, and collectively, we can create a more sustainable and just future.
And that's a future worth fighting for.
Absolutely. It's a future where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, where we live in harmony with nature, where we've tackled this climate crisis head on.
So to our listeners out there, we hope this given you not just, the facts about climate change, but also a sense of agency, a feeling that you can be part of the solution.
We all have a role to play in this, and it starts with each of us.
So keep learning, keep questioning, keep talking about this stuff, and most importantly, keep taking action. Every little bit counts.
Thanks for joining us on this.
And remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Use the hashtag #PlanetInDialogue to share your thoughts, connect with others, and let's keep this movement going. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay hopeful.